You know how coming home at the end of the day can feel completely different depending on where it is that you've come from? The same thing can happen with music. If you've seen my earlier videos, you'll know that tonality is this idea that within a piece of music, there's one particular note that feels like the home to that piece of music. If we say that we're in the key of C major, it doesn't just mean that we're using the notes from the C major scale. It means that within this song, the world that this piece of music exists in revolves around this note of C. All the other notes relate back to this key center. And that's what a musical cadence is. It's this feeling of arriving back at a key center. I find it interesting how we think about music. We tend to think of it as being horizontal, like it has a start and a finish, point A to point B. But I think there's another way of looking at it, which is a more circular idea. This is where we start at point A, the music develops and goes on a journey, and then circles back round to point A again. This doesn't mean that a piece of music will finish exactly how it started. It means that at certain times throughout the piece, it will arrive at somewhere familiar. Just how like the end of our day isn't exactly like the start of our day. However, we do return to somewhere familiar. There's 4 main types of these arrivals or cadences, so let's look at them now. The first cadence we're going to look at is the perfect cadence. This is the strongest of all cadences, and it occurs when a dominant chord is followed by the tonic chord. This is often found at the end of a phrase, or maybe at the end of an entire piece, and it's a really clear way of showing that the music has reached some kind of conclusion. Next, we have the Plagal Cadence. This is when the subdominant chord is followed by the tonic chord. It still has a sense of resolution, but not as much as the perfect cadence, because it doesn't have that leading note resolving to the tonic. It's still another way of arriving at the tonic chord or at the key center, but it doesn't necessarily create a definite phrase ending. The imperfect cadence is the opposite of a perfect cadence. It's any particular chord followed by a dominant chord. This creates a very strong feeling that the music hasn't finished and we need to complete the phrase. It sounds really weak for an ending, and it sounds like the phrase needs to be continued before it's finished. Finally, we have the interrupted cadence. This is a dominant chord followed by something other than. The dominant has such a strong pull towards the tonic that if we resolve it to another chord, it sounds like the music hasn't finished. Because of this, the music has this feeling like it's hanging on, because our ears want the music to resolve back to the tonic. But the phrase so far hasn't gone back to this key center. And so going back to this analogy of a home, how we arrive at a certain chord can feel completely different depending on the context. Say we arrive on an A minor chord. If we've come from the dominant, E, it will feel like we've reached the end of our phrase because of this perfect cadence. However, we can also arrive on an A minor chord in the key of C, and it won't feel like we finished. The chord is the same, but the context is different. Another way of looking at this is that cadences are the harmonic tool that we use for punctuation. When you see a full stop at the end of a sentence, you know that the sentence is finished. When you see a comma, you know that the sentence hasn't finished, and that it needs to be resolved, probably in the second half of the sentence. This idea of tonality is really interesting, and I have some other videos on it as well. Watch this video if you'd like to know how it works with chords, and watch this video if you'd like to know more about how it works with different keys. Thanks very much for watching, please subscribe, and I'll see you in these videos.